Hey Zaka family! Zaka is launching an exclusive membership platform to provide you with career development workshops, coaching, community, and so much more. Go to ZakaConnect.com and sign up to receive information on how to access early registration and perks.
Hello, everybody. This is Paul Herman, the Prince of Motivation and host of Zaka Presents My Journey. We're creating this vulnerable and positive platform where you get inspired and motivated from different leaders from our community. Today, our guest is George Nunez, who is co-founder of Bronx Tech Hub. George, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Paul and Greg. It's such a pleasure to be here. I am looking forward to sharing my story and having fun with you all as we get a chance to inspire the listeners out there.
Oh, yes, man. And I'm already inspired because obviously I see from the bio Bronx native over here, right? Bronx native. You know, I'm a native myself, so it's an honor to have you on the show, a fellow Bronx native. But let's dive a little bit more into where you're from and growing up in the Bronx.
Absolutely. First off, can I get a year?
We outside. Let's get it.
Yeah, but I think that's definitely a great question. What it was like growing up, it was rough. It was tough. I mean, I seen my mom struggle. I mean, we bounced in and out. We were homeless, then we lived from shelter to shelter, and then we grew up in public housing. And my mom did that with 3 kids, not to mention she was still going to school at the time, trying to get her associates at Hostos Community College. And then after that, becoming a Spanish teacher. So for me, it was like, all right, I gotta hustle. I gotta go get it. I gotta provide for the family because I know that my mom worked hard being an immigrant from Honduras. Right? So coming from one country to another, not to mention Honduras is a third world country. I was like, I definitely gotta outwork my mom. There's no way she'll outwork me. I can't sit with that. So it was definitely an experience that was interesting, but to say the least, it motivated me and it kept me hungry.
And what does like the culture of Honduras mean to you? You talk about your mom and her, like her working hard. Like, what does that culture look like to you?
Oh man, like when you see Hondureños, man, it's something that you get a warm feeling of, right? Because for us, we speak 3 different languages.
Okay, let's get it.
So we speak English, Spanish, and Garifuna. My mom ain't teach me Garifuna. She was a little petty. She said she didn't teach me. But she still wanted to talk her mess when we were around to other relatives. But that's no excuse. I still plan to learn, and I'm gonna definitely sneak up on her once I master Garifuna. But yeah, Garifuna is not only a language, but it's a culture, it's a tribe. So when you look at it, our dialect of Garifuna was originated from West Africa. So if you look at Hondureños, we got a unique physique or like history behind us because there's a culmination of African and Caribbean roots. Our ancestors came from West Africa, then they migrated to St. Vincent, and then they came to Honduras, right?
Okay.
For me, it's like I love the culture, I love the food, I love the people. We got our own dance that we celebrate every now and again called punta. So like it's literally where people get together and they dance it's pretty much mirrored behind African dance. But people get together and they beat the drums and they play a certain music and then people are just dancing together. So like that's like everything for me. We we got our Hondureño Independence Day coming up, Honduras Independence Day coming up next week, September 15th. So when I, and then you already know, you being from the Bronx, Paul, every year
Let's get it.
they got a Honduran parade in
Yep.
Park, right?
That's
so
right. Lock.
on lock. So even when we see it, man, it's that's something that I can't deny. It's in my veins. And whenever I see a gariguno, or a catracho, I always salute them.
I like how you really breaking it down right there. You really giving like the history of it. And I appreciate you doing. I know the listeners do as well too. When you have a guest on the show who really knows where they're from, you can always be like, I'm from the Bronx, right? But you really breaking it down to like know where my ancestors are from and how we got here, right? And they always say you got to know where about your history to know where you're going. So I'm glad that you know that, and you know that your people come from struggle and pushing, and obviously it migrated into your mom, and now it's into you. And like growing up in the South Bronx, I can only imagine the struggles, growing up in the Bronx. I mean, could you share a little bit more about your personal journey in the South Bronx and how you kind of start to manifest this financial journey, working in Wall Street? Like, what were some of the challenges you faced as an immigrant in that field?
Oh yeah, no, that's a great question, brother. So for me, I had an interesting upbringing in the Bronx because I, funny enough, I questioned my blackness, right? I knew I was black, but remember I was saying Hondurans are very interesting, is that people don't know where to place us. They're like, yo, are you black? Or are you Latino? Or are you Spanish? Are you Afro-Latino? And so they was like, yo, whenever I would speak Spanish, first off, the name would, if people paid attention, the name would throw them off, right? Like they don't worry about the first name George, but then the last name Nunez, they like, wait, hold on. Like you speak Spanish? And then when I would speak Spanish, people would be like, oh wow.
He's good.
and then the follow-up question is, did he learn it?
Yes.
In school, or was he taught it growing up? And so there was a lot of questions that as a kid I felt uncomfortable. And then a lot of times I was isolated to myself in elementary. The black kids was like, yo, he's too, he speaks Spanish. Like, we don't know if we could trust him. The Latino kids is like, he's too black. And so for me, it was like I definitely felt very uncomfortable, but I knew I was black, but I didn't know if I was fully accepted. And it wasn't until like around that middle school area or that middle school era where people was like, all right, he could dress, he could play ball, play basketball, all right, cool. Like, he one of us. And then that's when I just started naturally flowing into the black crowd. But yeah, that in terms of the identity made me a bit uncomfortable. Growing up in the projects, I felt like that, trying to find myself, seeing all my friends getting involved in gang activity or getting into fights. And so I got into that that culture or that lane because that's what was in my neighborhood. That was in front of you. That's what was pervasive. That was around me. That was my bubble. So it was inevitable. And it wasn't until I got shot in my leg at 14 where things started to change. And around this time, again, you're in high school, you feeling yourself, you going through all these changes. And I remember when one of the deans that snatched me up in school when I was at the Eagle Academy, he's like, yeah, man, you heading down the wrong path. Like you might not make it out. But I see potential in you. So I think it's best for you to attend this mentoring session on Saturdays. And Eagle Academy, they pride themselves on networking or mentoring young black men or young black boys. And so when I got to that Saturday session, that's what did it for me, because I started to be around mentors that would take me out of my neighborhood and invite me to their family homes or invite me to their lectures at colleges and universities. So now I'm expanding my horizons. Now I'm seeing there's more to life than the South Bronx. And that's what made it possible for me to kind of just make it, that's what made it possible for me to kind of make it out. But I guess the unfortunate part of it was survivor's guilt, because while I was doing great, my friends around me weren't. And they were having kids at an early age. No knock to people that had kids at an early age. You know, I think a kid or having kids are blessings, but not. I know that for me personally, I definitely wouldn't want to have the kid until I'm financially stable, because we all know, realistically speaking, kids are expensive. But you know, they would have kids at an early age, or they were being incarcerated.
Yep. It's hard to kind of step away from that. Seeing your friends falling back while you're inclining, because you're going to these mentorship meetings on a Saturday and they're like, yo, bro, let's hang out. And you're like, nah, I got to go to this thing. Yeah. Did you feel that? I know you said that there was a point in time where you felt like you didn't know what side to be on. Did you feel like that separation right there between your friends and you, like inclining in your life? Did you feel like there was another separation right there where your friends like, oh, you don't want to be with us anymore? And you're like, no, but I'm trying to.
It was definitely that. It was, you know, you too good, or you don't know us no more, or you different, or you changed, or you know, I would get certain like people would call me certain names. They'd be like, you know, you're when I went off to college, it was like, oh, you a college man now. You don't know nobody. You moving different. Or like when I was working on Wall Street, people be like, "Oh, what's up, Wall Street boy? Like you getting money now. You ain't putting nobody on." And so, you know, certain things like that, you could, like, things could easily affect you.
True. And especially when it's you by yourself. I mean, an accomplishment of working at Wall Street, we're going to talk about that as well. But like, this is just you being in that level. Like, you look around your block, you're the only one, you know, going down to that part of Manhattan. You know, we ain't talking about going to Harlem. We're talking about Midtown, downtown Manhattan, and being like, look, I'm gonna start elevating myself. So it's hard when you got a group of people, when you come home after work or just like an internship, and your friends are, you know, you're trying to play ball, you're trying to kick it with them. They're like, oh, they start calling you different names. You start feeling like you're an outsider. The same people you grew up with, you know. So I could only imagine you had a lot of life lessons that you learned growing up in the Bronx. Like, what was like one of the greatest lessons you learned growing up in the Bronx?
Greatest lesson I learned in the Bronx. I would say the greatest lesson I learned from the Bronx was, and I don't even got to tell you, Paul, because I could see it in you and I could hear your voice. Be authentic. Like when you meet a Bronx native, you could hear the accent.
Yeah.
You could hear where they're from. You could see in their posture. You could see the way they walk. Like, the Bronx has a lot of culture, brother.
Yeah. It's the birthplace of hip hop.
Come on now.
Come on. So 50 years right now.
50 years. And so when I think, it's like the Bronx is what the Bronx is my sleeve, or some I wear on my chest, or, you know, that's my cape. I throw my cape when I feel invincible, when I, you know, say I'm from the Bronx, no matter where I go. And
that's a badge right there.
It's a badge of honor. And people wish that they had that much confidence. But it's like, when you could show up as the best version of yourself in any room, whether if it be in a club or at a boardroom or at a conference, no matter where it is, you can show up as your best self and people tip your hat off. It just hits different, man.
I like how you said show up as the best version of yourself. I think that's a very powerful line. It's not a lot of words in there, but it's that what you just said was very impactful. You know, a lot of our guests had talked about, going into a place, into corporate America, and being like, I feel like I have to change because of my culture. I feel like I need to match the culture of that corporate workspace. But you're like, you know what? I wear that Bronx badge. I wear like my cape. That travels with you wherever you go, and just being authentic is sometimes a very hard thing to do when it shouldn't be. Right? It's you. Everyone's unique, but it definitely register with you that is what you had to do. That how does like your cultural background influence you in what you do? Because I know you're talking about your cultural background. We're talking about the culture of the Bronx. How does that influence you in what you do?
That's a great question. Um, it it definitely influences what I do because um, I think for the Bronx, it forces me to be authentic. And then being from Honduras is like, yo, never forget where you came from. So, prime example, like in business, whenever I'm working or I'm on a contract and they're like, hey, like, yo, we need a Spanish speaker, or like we need somebody to speak to someone in Spanish, like not shying away from that and taking that opportunity full force.
Hmm.
I'm always raising my hand for that. At first, and even to this day, I still do it. Like I go incognito, where I don't in certain settings I don't want people to know that I speak Spanish
Hmm.
because I'm curious to see what people will say. So it's more of like me playing me playing mind games and just seeing like how people would move, bro. If it's a business opportunity and they need a Spanish speaker, yo voy a estar ahí, So like I'm
Right.
definitely
Let's
definitely
go.
showing up.
That's important, and just knowing the three different languages, and obviously Spanish and English. I mean, that's two powerful ones right there. I could only imagine being in a corporate environment where especially some maybe in Wall Street, where there's not enough, people of color there that don't speak that language, right? So you come in and you're like, oh wow, I thought he was or he must have took that in college. We go back to how I was in the Bronx. Like, oh, he must have learned it growing up. Now, I you go from the Bronx, and I believe that if I'm correct me if I'm wrong, you went to Binghamton.
Yeah, so I went to Potsdam and then
Okay,
transferred to Binghamton. Yep.
I got you. So you in Binghamton right now. This is where you got your finance degree.
Yes, sir. That's where I
Okay.
graduated from.
Now, why finance?
It's a great question. And I'm gonna be truthful here. So in high school, the Eagle Academy, I was big on politics and wanting to work, uh, in policy and considering going to law school. I was school president for 2 consecutive years, junior and senior year. I was a part of the debate team, so like I did moot court. So this was me. Uh, and then mentors was like, forget all that, go where the money is,
Hmm.
and go work on Wall Street. And my older brother told me that too. Shout out to my mentors and shout out to my older brother Pat, my little sister Lorraine, my moms, and everybody that is locked in with me, my people that I love and all that. So
Hmm.
uh, yeah, they was like, go where the money is. I was like, all right, cool. So I ended up going to Potsdam. At that time, they gave me the most financial aid, and I knew I wasn't going to stay there for long. I was looking to transfer, so I took a couple of courses in accounting, finance, and I was like, all right, like this is something that I'm interested in. And then when I got the GPA of like a 3.8, and I transferred to Bing, um, I was like, all right, this is what it is. And sorry, let me backtrack. So when I was thinking of transferring, I thought about 4 schools. Um, I applied to UPenn, Cornell,
Mm.
U Albany, and then Binghamton. So I got denied from UPenn because of my SAT scores. I got waitlisted from Cornell, and I got into Albany and Bing. So I was like, I could take the risk and go to HEOP at Cornell University, take a bus ride and fight for my seat to get in. Ithaca. I'm like, that might be too much work, and I'll be pissed if they tell me no. So I'm like, all right. So now I come down to Bing in Albany, and I felt like Bing was the #1 SUNY and still is.
It was holding it down.
The New York State school, and so I'm like, all right. And not to mention, they had a pipeline at the School of in the School of Management of getting students into Wall Street.
Oh, okay, that's even better.
So yeah, it was two birds in one stone. So I'm like, all right, like this is me. And then after that, that's when I pursued the career of investment banking, and kind of went from there.
Are you upstate, man, in the cold right there? That's like you leaving the Bronx. That's when you had to have the official North Face bubble. Or the triple fat goose or Sub-Zero. I think that was a code right there.
Yeah, bro. Listen, man. Sub-Zero. You brought it up. You brought it back, man. They had documentaries on that and all. I had to bundle up, man. The goose, like
the goose, triple fat goose.
However you wanted. It was brick outside. It was brick outside.
I could only imagine that. But you went up there, you did your thing, you got that degree, and then you get into Wall Street, right? And I know obviously some of our listeners have seen movies on Wall Street and seen what it looks like on movies. But like, could you express to the listeners a little bit more about like what was that process for you, like going on to Wall Street? Like, what did that first day look like after graduating from college?
It's a great question. What it looked like was getting ready for training. So like they have all the analysts before they hit the desk go on training. Depending on the bank, sometimes they'll fly you out somewhere and do training somewhere else, or they'll have you do the training at the headquarters or at the office. But yeah, like I was mentally getting right for training, preparing. I tried to get books ahead of time. I was like, I was a bit nervous because I'm like, all right, like
different environment right now.
Yeah. I had to get on grammar because I was the only Black analyst at the time. So I'm like, all right, like this is war. I can't trust too many people. I can't trust anyone in this field. Like people are smiling in your face, stab you in your back, try to get you out of there. I like to say, couple of friends in the neighborhood have asked me like, yo, what do you think is worse, the hood or corporate and Wall Street? And I was like, oh yeah, nah, corporate, no question. Because in the hood, you could fall and stumble, but you'll figure it out, and most likely you'll find an OG that'll teach you the game or put you on, and you'll figure things out from there. On Wall Street, like they from the first few years, you figuring it out, you thugging it out. Unless you come from a well-off family, or unless somebody plugged you in, they don't got no OGs. And in fact, the OGs might even stab you in the back.
Because we talking about big money, so it's like that's if I put you on, you're gonna get closer to the money, and it's like it becomes a greedy moment right there.
Facts, or people don't want you to do better than them. So True. It's like now you have to really be cautious on who you talk to, what you say, how you connect with people. Like definitely a dirty game. So I started to learn that as you go along. Like you learn to be friendly and work with people, but you also learn never to trust.
And it sounds sad that you leave your environment where that was like an obvious thing in the Bronx. That just like you had to watch your back on corners. You couldn't wear certain colors. Then you get into corporate America. You go to college. You're like, all right, I graduate. I got my degree. I'm entering into Wall Street, and now it's a different type of environment that you think that it might not really exist, but then you realize it does exist, and it doesn't leave just because you're in corporate America, right? So I could only imagine the struggles in those first couple of years. Like you didn't have someone as an OG, especially you being the only person of color, to kind of pull you to the side and give you some insight, school you to the game. It was more like you got to figure it out on your own. But obviously, taking that work ethic from your mom and from your culture, and just in general, that's just that grind, that hustle from the Bronx. It kind of traveled into you, and it applied every single day of your life as you were working in there. So I could only imagine the amount of lessons you learned while you were on Wall Street. Like, what was like something that helped influence you in your approach to be an entrepreneur in a leadership position?
And when you say like entrepreneur in a leadership position, like in regards to transitioning in the tech.
You like, what was like a valuable lesson you learned in Wall Street to help you to help you transition? Because I mean, you must have learned a lot of things on that while you were there, you know. So then it helps. You know how like sometimes everything's a stepping stone to the next. How did it influence you to then move into that next approach of your life?
Yeah, I'll be honest, bro. There's two words. Oh, sorry, three words. Attention to detail, ATD. People are so anal if you make a mistake on Wall Street, and they'll drill it in your head. It will get that bad that if you make a certain mistake, people would do certain things like leave you off of calls, not give you tasks or assignments, just push you to the wayside, and they won't tell you anything. They'll smile in your face, but deep down when they get together, they're like, oh, you suck. So like any particular mistake you make could cost you, or could cost the bank or the client millions or even billions of dollars, depending on how big it is. But you know, people will be very anal about if you spell something incorrect, or if you're missing a page number, or if you send the wrong email to the wrong person. Like, just being real attentive to detail and taking your time throughout things, and making sure that you check things over and over again, at least 5 to 7 times before you send it to anybody.
Yeah, attention to detail is a life skill, right? People
Literally.
have it's a skill set that, you know, it's not about just how do I get this money, how do I incline up the corporate ladder. You got to have certain skill sets, and it doesn't even just matter in corporate America. You could be an entrepreneur as well too. Your attention to detail, you know, your detail of your consumers, the detail of the clients you work with, the emails you send out. Without that there, you know, you're kind of losing a little bit of that value, which in turn would obviously affect you at some point in time in the long run.
Not to mention, it hurts your brand. People will judge you. Like,
True.
you might have made a mistake and you think, oh, it's not that serious, and they're like, oh, it is that serious. Like, how can I trust you if you can't spell? How can I trust you if you missed the page number? Or how can I trust you if the alignment of the spreadsheet isn't up to par, or the alignment of the borderlines around the table of a financial model doesn't look up to par? Like, people will ding you for that.
And obviously if you can't take criticism, or you're in an environment where it's constantly being put in front of you, and you being the only person of color, it could feel a little harsh at times. Did you ever feel like those peers were taking advantage of you in that way?
Well, here's the thing too. Like, a lot of times they won't even give you the criticism. They just the criticism is no answer. So they'll leave you off meetings, and they'll leave you off calls. It really depends on the experience that you have.
Wow.
That's how ruthless it is. Yeah, absolutely. But I would say when I did receive criticism, I was going back and I was going back and redoing things, or redoing assignments, just so that I wouldn't make the same mistake again. So yeah, like I definitely am a person that respects criticism. I need that. Like, if you don't have criticism, how will you ever get better?
True. Yeah, you need that feedback. Something I want to ask you is, could you tell us a little bit more about being a sales associate at a startup consulting company? How did you help early startup founders like scale their businesses and, from like pre-seed to like Series A?
Yeah, great question. So the sales associate, what that entailed was at the time was reaching out to startup founders, telling them about the services that we provide and how we help them scale, and then getting them on a call and pitching them our consulting company, and then from there, the ball is in their court on whether they want to work with us or not. And usually we would work to them anywhere from 1 to 3 months, depending on what they needed from us or what was their pain points. We usually would ask them like, what's their pain points? And I got to tell you, man, like I did that at the right time, because a lot of the clients that we got was from, believe it or not, was from Clubhouse. So,
Mm.
During that time around like 2020, 2021, before Clubhouse died, and, Clubhouse, they literally capitalized off of COVID for what it was, just because of the situation at hand, and everybody was inside, so no one really had anything much to do. So, yeah, I was able to get some clients from Clubhouse, and the rest was history. It was between Clubhouse and LinkedIn, and all the people that I reached out to developed the CRM, and we used the platform Zoho to develop that CRM. CRM, for those who don't know, a CRM is literally a place where you could store all your clients' contact, and also see what's in the deal pipeline, right? So it's basically a customer relationship management tool platform, and you could see if the deal has passed, if the deal is on pause, or if it failed, or fell through the cracks. So it helps keep you organized and build structure in your company. But some of the things that we help the startup founders grow in, per se, was like we would pretty much run A/B tests for them, help them secure partnerships with any organizations, advising them on their cap tables, making sure that the cap tables aren't dirty. I think that's big. When you are new to the startup realm, you don't know what a lot of things or terminologies are, and so you literally have to fall flat on your face or bump your head a couple of times. And so we try to avoid some of the things such as that. So yeah, making sure that their cap tables were clean, as well as developing marketing strategies as well.
Now, in your lifespan of doing all this, you worked on Wall Street, as an investment bank, and you do your sales, your startup, consulting companies, project manager for tech nonprofits.
And I forgot to tell you this, right? So what opened up that next phase in my career of like product and being a product manager was that experience at that startup consulting company, because when we were working with the underrepresented founders, startup founders, one thing I realized was that I realized two things. They didn't fully understand tech, because they would outsource their tech and didn't really have a CTO on board or co-founder that was a developer or engineer. So they didn't understand tech, and they didn't understand product. And so when at that point, I spoke to a friend of mine who was a software engineer at Airbnb, my boy Andrew Floyd. Yeah, I'm always giving him his flowers. I was telling him, hey, bro, like, I'm trying to figure out the next phase of what I should get into. I got a finance background. I've been consulting for a couple of startups. What you think I should get into at this point? And he's like, hey, man, you should, with your background, you should look into product management. And so I was like, all right, cool. So he was like, yeah, do your research and get back to me. And so when he said that, I spent some time looking up product management and seeing what it was. And then for me, like everything was history. I took a product management boot camp through Thinkful. And then that's how I kind of maneuvered and pursued the product manager path.
Now, with all that, all these things that you've been going through, all these different, I want to say genres or different working experiences, like how have these things shaped your your leadership style?
It's a great question. It helped shape my leadership style in a way where I could be a chameleon in any space, right? So I could adapt to any space, and what I mean by it is like I would take it a step further. A chameleon on a chessboard, like all it is, right, is chess. Working on Wall Street, working with startups, being in product, it's all chess. So you got to figure out how to win the game, and knowing that the chess pieces involved. So when it comes down to leadership, I've also realized certain people, or like with anyone, there's a certain way you have to talk to them to get the best out of them. And that's what I realized through my experiences. Like somebody I could be super hard on, they'll understand and they'll be focused. Some people I have to talk a certain way or put on a certain tone so that they don't get offended. And then certain people, I just can't waste my time on until they're ready to work or they're ready to come around, because my time is limited. So just being able to navigate and swift through on how I can get certain things done with people or collaborate or get the best out of people is definitely key when you're leading. You always got to figure out how you can get the best out of everybody.
You see, you dropping some gems right now. You dropping some gems, and I know that leadership quality, that life skill that you acquired, has helped you out in regards to your company, right? And I want to know a little bit more about Bronx Tech Hub and like what is the mission over there.
Absolutely, brother. So, I'll be honest. Bronx Tech Hub happened by accident. What we really wanted to do, and shout out to my co-founder, Danielle Nicholson, and Stephon Odom, who's a part of the founding team, and everyone else that contributed to Bronx Tech Week and Bronx Tech Hub success. It started with Bronx Tech Week. So Bronx Tech Week, Danielle and I decided to host it. Her and I were in tech. She noticed that I was a product manager. I noticed that she was a startup lawyer, angel investor. And so we were like, all right, like, how do we give back to the Bronx? How do we pay it forward to the Bronx in tech? And so we thought about it. We shot on it for a bit, and we was like, "Hey, let's do Bronx Tech Week. Let's do a Bronx Tech Week." And this is me being real. A lot of people did not think we were gonna pull it off. They were like, "Oh, they're crazy. How can they do this?" So some people like, "Yeah, we tried bringing tech to the Bronx. We tried creating a tech arena here. It didn't work, you know." And so we were like, well, we're going to do it the right way. And when we seen the response to the Bronx and how many people really showed up during a 4-day week, it was amazing. We had a day full of panelists to speak about their trajectory and their career journey in tech. We had entrepreneur professors to angel investors to VCs talk about their experience investing in startup businesses. We had a pitch competition that was amazing, and the winner got 10,000 credits, $10,000 in credits from OpenAI, and then we capped it off with a youth high school hackathon, where kids had to come up with a tech solution to better transportation in the Bronx. So with that success, we were like, and the traction that we received in support from so many people after that, we were like, all right, let's turn this into a nonprofit. And that's when Bronx Tech Hub came about. And with Bronx Tech Hub, what we want to do is create a tech ecosystem in the Bronx, as well as bring tech resources in the Bronx. And we have 4 pillars. So the 4 pillars are education, professional advancement, entrepreneurship, and tech advocacy. And so these are the things that we'll be centering our mission and our goals around. Bronx Tech Hub is a way for us to host programming throughout the year. And then Bronx Tech Week will be something that it'll be an initiative that will fall under Bronx Tech Hub, but it'll be something that we'll host annually in May during Bronx Week.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Wow, you out here. That seems like a large undertaking, and it's sad that people doubted it. Versus saying, well, you know what, it didn't work for us, maybe it could work for you. But this is again when people get into their insecurities pop in, and they don't want to see other people winning when you would want to see your community winning. If something is positive and something uplifting that's coming into your community, that's going to potentially influence the youth to be better individuals, like, we should be like applauding those people, because it takes time, it takes money, it takes a lot of effort to put that programming together. So whether it's a program that's going to be there for a day, or a program that's going to be there for a week, other organizations and people in general should just do a better job of just being like, you know what, the more the better. Let's just get more people involved so that we could have a better Bronx and we can have a better tomorrow. But it's something, it goes over people's heads.
Oh yeah, 100%. And to chime in on that, Paul, I think the other thing that I noticed with people, it's the traumas, like you said, it's the insecurities, and when people haven't seen things get done in the manner before, or they don't think it's possible, they just are like, they immediately shoot it down, because they're like, hey, well, how are you going to do it if that's never been done before? Or how can you do it when somebody tried to do that before? Mm-hmm. And it's like, maybe it wasn't the right timing.
True.
Maybe that person wasn't the best person for the job.
Maybe the right demographic. I mean, ages, different things.
Or they didn't have the right resources. So, yeah, man, honestly, I'm just thankful that we were able to successfully pull it off.
Mm-hmm. Congratulations.
Yeah, I appreciate you. And there's still more work to be done.
Oh, yeah, that's good. I'm glad you're saying that. It doesn't stop with that one time. There's so many more opportunities out there. Has that helped you out when it comes down to like the role as being a project manager at Seclean Labs? I know. So segueing into that.
Yeah, no, for sure. So I believe it has helped me become a better product manager.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll say product, PRODUCT, product. It definitely has helped me become a better product manager at Seclean Labs, because it made me more focused and organized. When I started to create the pitch deck and the proposal for Bronx Tech Hub, I was all over the place. We wanted to cover so much. And then I had to hone in on the 4 pillars. I had to hone in on our mission and stick to that. And so in product, depending on where you do product for, who you do product for. You could be managing one product, you could be managing a feature of a product, or you can be managing different products. And it's important to be organized and structured. And uh, that's what Bronx Tech Hub did for me. It made me more focused and structured.
Mm-hmm. Got you. Now, I know a lot of immigrants, and when I'm talking to a lot of the guests, they talk about some of the unique things that immigrants bring to like their career, right? I know you talked about our cultural background, being from the Bronx, and also like your cultural background from like your mom's side of things, right? What is like some of the strengths that immigrants bring to a workplace, or even just being in entrepreneurship?
I would say diversity in thought,
Mm,
because
mm-hmm,
you not only spent some time in America, but you also have your back country that you can rely on, like your lineage that you can rely on. So you having the best of both worlds, that helps bring a particular perspective in the workplace too that other people haven't thought of. So I would definitely say that diversity in thought truly helps.
mm-hmm. And with all the years of experience being in like the financial world, right? I know that there's a big concern about the lack of diversity in the financial world. I want to kind of get a little bit more of your understanding of it. Do you feel like it's growing? Do you feel like it's decreasing? You know, and how can we improve that?
I definitely feel like it's growing, for sure. I definitely feel like it's growing. But I also feel as though the only way that could change is if the company and the government wants it to change. That makes sense. Like it's a system, and they done that on purpose. If they were if they truly cared, and more black and brown folks were in these corporate spaces, we wouldn't talk about diversity. There wouldn't be a need for diversity, because the people already in there, and more people are bringing people in. So it's really about the corporate black leaders that they have in these corporate firms, and these recruiters that they have in these places, to then pull back and say, all right, how do we get more people in?
Mm-hmm. And so that's when you have to have more of us individuals, the people of color up there. This when you talked about when you first came into Wall Street, how you were the only person of color and you didn't have like an OG in a sense to help bring you up. Now you're becoming that OG, right? And then you start to bring other people in. But it's definitely a struggle, and it will, like you said, the people at the top have to make the choice to make the change. You know, it's not just a pull from the bottom; it has to be a pull from the top as well to meet in the middle.
Exactly.
Um, and I could imagine as you were climbing this ladder, right? There was a lot of significant challenges that you had to kind of go through, right? You spoke up about a few of them earlier today on the show, but is there any a particular challenge or moment in your life that while you're in your career that it kind of like really knocked you off, right? And how'd you navigate through it? And like what was like the big learning experience from it?
The biggest challenge that knocked me off.
Hmm.
Hmm.
You're climbing up this ladder. You obviously leaving the Bronx, going to college, going into Wall Street, navigating through Wall Street, in the first couple of years on your own, right? You get to a place in time, you opening your own business. There's a lot of things that have gone on, So what has been like a big challenge for you during this whole time?
I would say that the biggest challenge was not getting a return offer while I was doing my investment banking internship. Like that was the biggest one that got me, because while you're in college, you're supposed to get internships, and during that summer, your whole focus is to get a return offer. So when you don't get a return offer, it looks bad, or people question it, or it's not to say that you can't bounce back from it, but it definitely looks bad. And so for me, I was just frustrated with myself because I wasn't as focused as I needed to be. I was in New York. I was getting all types of money that I've never seen before at the time. And so I'm around friends, like you said, rather than locking myself away for the whole summer. I was going out with friends. I was, going to the club, getting sections, all the stupid stuff that we were used to.
Mm-hmm. That bubble you was talking about earlier.
The bubble, and so that is what caused me not getting off. I just wasn't focused, and it was interesting because I was on track to get an offer midsummer. They was like, keep doing what you're doing, and then I just let that get to me, and I was like, all right, I got this. And there was times I would come late, or I was missing certain meetings. I was hungover. Like it was just an interesting time. But yeah, that made me realize, like, yo, don't ever do something like that again.
Mm-hmm. And I'm glad you realize that. Some people don't even realize it, and that's why they get fired, right? You realize it, and you thought about, like, your culture, your people struggled to even get you to that position, that table to sit down. Your mother worked very hard, supporting you and your siblings, getting you to get into college. You gotta, your life kind of flashes in front of you at that point in time. You start to say, wow, like, hold up, too many people have helped me get here. And they helped you knowing that they potentially were never going to be there. And that's when you have to really acknowledge, like, wow, I'm privileged to be here. And more importantly, I should want to be here because I belong here. You put the work in. It's not like you were handed it, right? You had to put the hours in, go to school, get the degree, work, start working. It's a privilege to be where you are, right? And you realize that, and look at you now, like all the things you have accomplished, from growing up in the Bronx and seeing all the things you saw to where you are right now. It really goes to show the person that's inside of you, and the person that you have manifested over the many years to be. When that teacher or professor had told you, like, look, you're going down the wrong road, I see a lot of potential in you, you had to believe those words. You had to be like, well, if you see something, let me see if I can apply myself. And I think it's people like that chime into our lives occasionally, and to say those magical words, or some words that inspire us to be like, wait, hold up, let me think about what's on the table right now, and how I could pivot this or make this an actual move. And you made a lot of great moves, and you're still making them, and you're also continuously giving back to your community. So George, just thank you for just being on the show, being present, sharing your story. Last words for the listeners.
Yeah, for sure. And I'll be fair in that, like, yeah, that was definitely one of the deans that had pulled me aside and spoke with me. And I was actually shocked because I was used to a lot of teachers telling me, "Oh, you would never make it out of the hood, or you would never be successful." I would make jokes in the class, and so, like, that meant a lot for him to do that.
Yeah.
But last words, I would say, King persevera alcanza, as my mom would always tell me. Those who persevere will achieve. Continue to stay strong, focus, never give up, stay out the way, keep people close around you that want to see you do better at all times, and that hold you accountable. And whatever it is you want to do in life, pursue it to the end.
Well, I'm with you, man. And being a Bronx native, much, much, much love and respect to you. Um, a lot of us in the Bronx don't really make it out sometimes, and especially in that
Right.
era, right? It just didn't make it out. And not saying that they could have never made it out, but the decisions that they made, the choices, it limit them. And it limit their mindset, and it affected them. But individuals like ourselves, you know, we got the Bronx on our back. We got that cape and we got that badge. So let's keep representing. And to the listeners out there, I just want you to know, if you want to hear more stories like George, check us out on ZakaConnect.com or follow our feed, Zaka, wherever you listen to your podcast.